And then the weirdest thing happened. This is the weirdest thing that has happened in my life to date. When they get past us, they're like coming closer and closer towards us, and suddenly 7 men wearing camping gear, like the most inappropriate gear, the most inappropriate attire for Costa Rica you could imagine. Because I then suddenly thought, we've just hallucinated the whole thing. They're just people. Now, because this universe is actually holographic, these are holographic beings, and they holographically shapeshifted into humans, who then, we're watching them, they then turn and walk onto the ocean like Jesus Christ.
What?
And
underwater?
Yeah, and then dematerialize into balls of light. A lot of the information, it was about them wanting to help humanity. We're here to fulfill a destiny. Like, everything has been leading up to this moment. We are supported. All of this information, and that changed my life forever.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mind the Shift, and welcome to the program, Arabella Thaïs. Hi,
thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you because I've read about your work, and I listened to you in a seminar recently, and you said so many fascinating things. You are a philosopher, but you're not just any ordinary compartmentalized philosopher. Your research spans, and listen to this, folks: quantum mechanics, cosmology, chaos theory, literature, aesthetics, higher dimensional mathematics, ontology, and metaphysics. And you run something called the Temple of Truth, a school of consciousness and self-realization. Mm-hmm. Now, this all sounds fantastic in my mind. And I'm intrigued by what you say, what you've said, and what it also says on your website about this aesthetics part. Beauty. You refer to Dante Alighieri's words that beauty will save the world. So let's kick off there. What does that mean, and what is beauty? Is it another way of saying that love is the only creative force in the universe? That beauty and love, in a way, are the same, or what is it? What does it mean to you?
Okay, so there's a few things there. I'll come back to whether beauty and love are the same. I don't think they are, but I think they're inextricably intertwined. So they are, but then I also believe that beauty transcends. But I'll come back to that. You referenced that quote by Dante, which I love. And I think what that confers, the notion that beauty will save the world, is the tremendously redemptive quality of beauty. Its power to absorb us and transform us. You know, the quality that it has to elevate our consciousness. The Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus said that the soul that beholds beauty becomes beautiful. Okay, so this notion that beauty is a sort of apex of consciousness is not an original idea. This is an ancient idea. This comes from really the axial age, so around 500 BC, with thinkers like Plato, who spoke about the beautiful, the true, and the good as this holy trinity, wherein those three things are one and the same. Yeah, it's the ultimate archetype. It's the primordial archetypal form from which all things originate and to which all things return. So beauty in that way is the Godhead. So that links back a bit to this notion of beauty and love. Love in many ways is the most powerful force in the universe for its capacity to bind us and unify us. And I think, and it'd be interesting to hear what you think, and maybe if your listeners want to contemplate this, all instances of love implicate beauty. Love is always beautiful, even if it's unrequited. You think about Romeo and Juliet. I mean, that's a tragic story, but it's also beautiful. It's a beautiful tragedy. It's pathos. So there's a kind of anguish in the beauty, but it's beauty nonetheless because of love. In these star-crossed lovers, or even in Wuthering Heights, which is one of my favorite novels, or it was one of the most influential novels for me growing up. which is a Victorian novel by Emily Bronte, and it's about this great love story between Cathy and Heathcliff. Also quite a destructive love, thwarted love, but so beautiful and painful again. So I do think all love, even if it is challenged, confers beauty and is beautiful. Now, does every instance of experiencing beauty involve love?
Yeah.
I don't know if it does. I don't know if when I listen to a Beethoven quartet and I move to tears, whether that aesthetic experience connects me to a sense of love. For me, it doesn't. So I think that what that means logically is that all love contains beauty, but not all beauty contains love. Therefore, logically, beauty would be. Anyway, that's just something that's not like a dogmatic axiom. That's just something to contemplate. But so for me, beauty is the superlative experience. In a way, it's one of the superlative experiences of consciousness. But without love, without love being the pathway to beauty, there's it cannot realize its full power. Maybe we can explore that more. But in terms of creating this ideal society, you have to have this foundation of heart-centered awareness and living from the heart and love-based, like unconditional agape love-based relationality, in order for that transcendental beauty, which is truth and goodness, to be realized.
Yeah. I think I agree. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. But when you create something, I think that you have to be in a state of love, unconditional love in a way, love for yourself, for what you're doing, for the project, for the idea that you have. It's like the Platonic, Plato's world of forms, that you have this ideal thing in your mind that you want to create, and you see it before your inner eye, so to speak, and in order to feel that, to be fulfilled or filled with that amazing feeling of wanting to create it, you have to kind of be in a state of love as well, because it's kind of a love. You love the project, you love what you're creating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and then is it beautiful at the same time? I guess it is in your mind's eye. It is beautiful what you want to create, and then as we all know, this is an approximation, this 3D world. So what you come up with, what you finally create, is of course suboptimal in relation to what you have, what the idea was. But you did it. Do you catch my drift?
I do. I don't necessarily believe that any creation necessarily has to be suboptimal. I look at a poem like Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot, which is my favorite poetic work. That for me it's literary perfection. You don't need to add one word or subtract it. It is fully realized. It's a fully realized aesthetic art form. That's perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
I also think, whatever, like Michelangelo's David, there's many instances of superlative art where it is actually perfection. And it's as close as we can get to perfection in this material realm. Now,
but does it really correspond to the when the author had this story in his or her mind from the beginning? Does it really? We don't know that, of course. We don't know if it was even more perfect.
Allegedly, Michelangelo said, "I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free."
Oh.
So, I really understand from that there's a kind of teleological bent to aesthetic realization. Now, telos means purpose or goal in Greek. So teleology is the notion of like a purpose. It's about things being purpose-driven, having a final cause, and being influenced by that final, like that end goal. So what I think Michelangelo means there is that he can foresee, and all geniuses, I think, can see the future. They can sort of see see something beyond, and it's usually a beyond in time. Like they know what they're getting to, and they will work relentlessly until they realize it. Like Ernest Hemingway wrote A Farewell to Arms 39 times, and he did not release it until he was satisfied. So it's like, again, this idea of releasing the angel. The angel's already there. It's not that he has a sort of idea of what he wants to create. It's like a God-given, that the artwork is not his, it's God-given. It's divine, it's given. Hence why when you behold like a superlative work of art, or listen to a piece of classical music, like an excellent classical music, you are moved by something. And I know the question to ask is, what is it that moves through us when we are moved? What is it that is moved? And it is that apex of beauty, truth, and goodness, I believe, that moves through us, that only the very best iterations of art, or nature, of course, because nature is obviously divine, can elicit in us.
And that will save the world if we understand that beauty, and that we should try to attain that level of beauty, or that insight into beauty.
It's about moral beauty. So because beauty is related to truth and the good, that necessarily means, beauty of character. It's about having, like, polishing, refining your character, seeing that angel within yourself and carving until you set it free. So chipping away at all the extraneous aspects of self that aren't really you, that don't belong to you, all the trauma, the shadow aspects, like, this is Jungian, this is depth psychology now. The process of individuation, of becoming whole, is a return. To become whole is to return. And it's to understand, that duality is in itself divine and non-dual, which is why shadow work is not about eliminating so much as about integrating. And in that process of integration, you release behavior that is not true, that is not good, that is not beautiful, because it's the return to source. Now, what is this whole journey of life in the first place? I would argue, and again, this is a very ancient idea, this is a Platonic and Neoplatonic idea, that the original one, the one, forgets itself. Yeah, it's like Lucifer, the fallen angel, forgets itself and goes through such a profound loss of consciousness in order to experience the sheer joy and ecstasy of remembering itself all over again. And in order for it to remember itself, it has to experience separation. And that's where evil, shadow, whatever occurs, right? So the process of individuation is actually, I believe, a process of aesthetic realization, that we are artworks. Yeah, we are Ernest Hemingway writing ourselves 39 times. Do you know what I mean? Just going through multiple lives again and again and again and again, as long as it takes, until we return to the one.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I guess that's the tenet of being here in this three-dimensional world, is that forgetfulness, and as you say, remembrance is the goal, in a way. Many people say this, and I had a follow-up question that just fell out of my mind just now.
Sorry.
But well, talking of beauty, I think most people today in this modern society have a much more superficial idea about what beauty is. But I mean, you have laid it out so beautifully here. So for us to understand that this is much deeper, actually, and much more important to our understanding of what we are and our lives, basically, to understand beauty and what it is, and how we can attain it, and how we should strive for it. I mean, this deeper sense of beauty, because it's very, I mean, beauty to people, most people isn't what you're talking about now. It's because it's such a travesty, really, that the word beauty is associated with the beauty industry. And what that really is the cosmetic industry. It's not beauty industry. It's not an industry of beauty. It's an industry of cosmetics, which is fine. That's what that is, but it's not what beauty is. And I think what we really need, to go back to the sort of underlying ethos of this podcast, and why you wanted to chat today, of creating an ideal society, that will necessitate reclaiming the word beauty, redefining it and reintegrating it into public discourse and society at large, to give people the right. I think people have a right to understand
what beauty really is. Because I mean, look, beauty is accessible to anyone, but I think we could enhance it in an intelligent and evolutionary way if people understood what it confers. Because someone might look at the starry night sky and be moved and then continue with their mundane life, because there is no spiritual, cosmological, scientific framework around that informs and could inform their soul, whereby, they don't have to choose between religion and science. That dichotomy is an old paradigm. It's an old paradigm construction, and it needs to die now.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. It's like so like 300 years ago. Like, we need to move on.
Exactly, or move back to how it used to be before that.
But also no, I think we need to move on.
In a way, I mean, because there was no real separation between spirituality and science 500, 600, 700 years ago.
True. That's true. I mean, it was, obviously the alchemists and the Renaissance, it was much more integrated, but I see evolution as a spiral. It's not a linear progression. As you, of course, you'll be on this, you'll share this view. So what we need to do is move up an octave, like spiral up. So we are returning to where it was, but at a higher octave.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it mimics itself. It rhymes.
And especially with like the advent of AI and technology, and also, which is its own, that's its own podcast, but with all these modern developments and new discoveries in science and quantum mechanics, I think how we can understand the nature of the universe, it's much more advanced, obviously, than it was 700 years ago.
Of course. Yeah, it's high time to, as you say, to reconcile those two. Do away with that dichotomy. So let's talk a bit about society and how human beings can build a better society, more truthful society, a society based on our essence, if you will, not based on us being cogs in the gears of a mental construct, which I think we have been led to believe that we are. And I know that you're very interested in the intersection or possible intersection of politics and more esoteric values.
Mm-hmm.
So I often say, to begin this topic, by something that I often say, is that, and it's also a tenet of this podcast actually, that our time is the first time in recorded history. I'm open to the possibility that we have had civilizations far back in time which were perhaps integrated, but this is the first time in recorded history that the whole of humanity is truly integrating, and that does things with us. Would you agree with that?
Could you repeat the question, like the last bit? Well,
that humanity is truly integrating for the first time in recorded history, and this is something that does things with us as a species, because we can, we know in real time what is happening at the other end of the planet.
Do you mean that we're in a kind of, it's like an unprecedented moment? That's
as I say, at least in recorded history.
Yeah. I think when you were speaking, I got slightly distracted when you spoke about ancient civilizations.
Okay. Who wouldn't be? Because I'm distracted by that all the time. So
well, I mean, I actually do wholeheartedly believe there have been ancient civilizations, and I have had firsthand. If you want to speak about this later, we can. I have had first-hand physical contact with extraterrestrial beings.
Wow.
So, like that. So, I mean, I do actually say this sometimes at academic conferences when people ask me where I'm getting my information from, because my background is in literature and I'm doing a PhD in philosophy and physics now. And even though I'm not a classically trained physicist, a lot of the information that comes through me really pertains to quite high level physics. And, I know that this information is coming from, it's not mine, it's coming through me from higher intelligence, but we can come back to that. Your question was about whether this is a sort of unprecedented moment in human history. Again, it comes back to the spiral. Let's just say there have been ancient civilizations. I mean, look at something like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Graham Hancock is just the most amazing man for all of this. Like, the work he's done on this stuff is incredible.
I just yesterday listened to a program on Gaia about Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, where Andrew Collins was talking about that. So he's
that's a synchronicity. That's a synchronicity, even just that, because I don't really think about Göbekli Tepe. But so we know there's, like, whether or not you want to subscribe to Atlantis and Lemuria, obviously that's kind of next level of that's a big leap. But we know, like, categorically, fact, there was advanced human behavior and construction going on like 12,000 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So where we are now, most probably we've been at, there have been other phases in our development where we've crossed sort of singularities. I mean, even if you don't subscribe to the ideas that we've just alluded to, and you want to go for a more mainstream archaeological timeline, when humans began speaking in language, like symbolic language emerged, like, and the rate of grey matter growing in our brains. I mean, I don't know what the exact speed it was growing at, but it was like maybe like 1,000x faster than any other animal on the planet. Suddenly, for no known reason, science does not know why this happened, humans just started developing rapidly, began speaking language, began making art, and then this is what differentiated humanity. So in a way, that was a kind of singularity moment. It just occurred over thousands and thousands of years. Same as the Cambrian explosion. It happened about 500 million years ago. Same thing.
Yeah, you're referring to the event about 300,000 years ago when Homo sapiens appeared suddenly, and
no, the Cambrian explosion is about 5.
No, I mean not the Cambrian. The Cambrian, that was 500 million years ago.
Yeah.
I'm going back to what you're saying about humans. As you say, that we suddenly got these big brains and started thinking in different ways. And I know Greg Braden often speaks about this, and he talks about this the chromosome number 2, which seems like it has been manipulated. Right, kind of cut off and put together in a different way.
Comes back to extraterrestrials, possibly.
Yeah. Okay. We have to go down that path, of course. Maybe we should do that now. I have questions about UFOs and UAPs and stuff like that later on. But I mean, the conversation has to go where it wants to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think because your original question, I think this is where it's leading us. This is where it's leading us to. Yeah. All I know, just briefly to kind of finish that part of the question, all I know is that what we're going through, none of us can predict where we're going to be in 5 years, because these singularity moments, like in the Cambrian explosion, just for your listeners, that was again another accelerated moment of evolution, but that lasted about 10 million years. Yeah, when suddenly all of life on Earth, it went from being kind of single-celled, whatever, it just exploded. Life just exploded, and scientists don't know why that happened. So yeah, again, the stuff around the chromosome that you mentioned with Greg Braden, that's not my area of expertise, but we can talk about extraterrestrials because I've had first-hand experience. So
Please.
I can talk.
I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
So where you say that's where you get your information from? Is that you're alluding to that? Is that
okay?
What's happening here? You just
don't know where to begin. I kind of don't know where to begin with this.
Okay, let's do this then. Let me ask you the question that I had about this, or the questions I had about this. I've been following the UFO UAP disclosure process quite closely, and I've done some interviews with people who know something about that, and I've listened to a bunch of interviews with whistleblowers who are now coming forth, more and more of them, and some of them have even testified in the U.S. Congress, as you know. Yes. And so I listened just recently to an interview with yet another whistleblower in the UFO UAP disclosure field called Matthew Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he said some astonishing things about what's going on here related to what you're talking about, extraterrestrials, or maybe we should say non-human intelligence, because many believe that they have been here associated with or connected with. Yeah, they are terrestrial, right? Yeah. Some of them, or most of them, perhaps. Yeah. And he said that there exists an international cabal of sorts of political, corporate, and other covertly influential figures who actively keep the rest of us in the dark about non-human intelligence, about true science, what these people actually know about science and the true nature of reality. Is that what you also have heard from your sources?
I think rather than talking about the cabal, which may or may not be real, because the thing is with that, I know that to create an ideal society, we have to focus on what we want to create, right? We need to focus on what we want to create. And I know, and of course, information is suppressed. And of course, the existence of extraterrestrials is suppressed. Okay. I just know that my role here is not to talk about that part of it. It's just not my role. You know what I mean? So I know that's being suppressed. What I can speak about directly and from my heart is what I've experienced. Yeah, and again, I seek to focus on what we should create. And I do know that if there is some sort of mass awakening, and it only needs to be a critical mass, I don't know what number that is, how many people that needs to be, but because we create our reality, because imagination is everything, because everything is pure consciousness, just imagine, and as if we all shared a vision of what that ideal society, that ideal polis looked like, we could create it pretty damn quickly. Mm. So this does tie into the extraterrestrial phenomenon, because at least the beings I met are profoundly benevolent. I could cry thinking and, just remembering their benevolence, their compassion, their vibration is so high. It's so high, they're not even in bodies anymore, and I don't claim to know everything. All I know is what I experienced. And that occurred in Costa Rica. I lived in Costa Rica for about 3 years. I moved there in 2019. I'll just give you a narrative overview of what happened. I moved there in 2019. I had not really been thinking about aliens at all. I'd always been sort of interested in strange phenomena like crop circles or ghosts or things, because I sort of knew deep down it was true, but it wasn't my great interest. Now, I got to Costa Rica, and when I moved there, I was with my friend. I have no qualms in saying that I took LSD. Okay, I don't care that that's illegal, whatever. I took LSD. I don't care. No, it's a human right to take psychedelics. It's a human right to take psychedelics. I took LSD with my friend, and I really don't take that very often at all. And I took it with my friend. And I said to him, the download that came through, I said to him, okay, this place, it was a place called Santa Teresa in the Nicoya Peninsula on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. It's like a vortex, big time vortex. Yeah. It said, this place is on a crystalline grid connected with other dimensions of the universe, and there are aliens here. And my friend was like, all right. Okay. Cool. Anyway, so he left and I continued to live there. Obviously, 6 months later, COVID happened. That was just a super weird time. And I would go to the beach and meditate. And what started happening initially is I started seeing UFOs or UAPs in the sky. And I was like, what is this? And they were translucent kind of globules. And I'd see them in the day and they'd move in very erratic motions and sort of hang about and then disappear. I'd speak to people who'd lived there for a long time, and anyone who'd lived in this place for a long time had seen strange things, strange lights, orbs. Some people had even heard crafts over their house and whatnot. Anyway, the more I'd go to the beach and I'd sort of meditate at sunrise or sunset, during my meditations, I started speaking light language. What I came to understand was light language. It was like speaking in tongues. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I think I might be communicating. I think there might be extraterrestrials here and I might be communicating with them. But again, it was very abstracted and I wasn't sure. Fast forward 2 years, I had a friend staying with me from LA. She was there for 6 weeks. And towards the end of her trip, we went down onto the beach, and there's a sort of particular part of the beach where no one goes to, where I think it's some sort of energetic highway. And I also think it's a highway of timelines, because these extraterrestrials that I met are from the future, and they are actually us from the future. Wow. Not necessarily humans from the future, but I don't know. I don't fully understand it,
entities,
but they sorry?
Entities or souls or something.
But it was almost like I feel like I came from this place to take on some sort of mission on Earth, and a bunch of us did, to then create a harmonic bridge between dimensions. Okay. I sort of, part of me when I share this feels hesitant, because if this can create cognitive dissonance in someone who hasn't, I don't know, who hasn't thought about this stuff. I'm always very conscious of who I share this with, because I don't want to create cognitive dissonance in people. But if, I'm sure your listeners are really open to this, if this is the kind of stuff that you pursue. Okay, so we get to the beach. First thing that happens is I just see spirals of binary code in my head. Yeah, I'm like seeing spirals of binary code in my head. And we are seeing flashing lights on the horizon. And my friend, who's called Zoe, she won't mind me mentioning her, she said to me, what's going on? I was like, no, I think it's just fishing boats. I think it's fishing boats, because you do see fish. I mean, there are fishermen out there. And I was just trying to stay grounded. Suddenly these little lights start flying around. They're like hovering and moving, and it's quite clear they're not fishing boats. At the same time, I'm like feeling this, what feels like a palpable energy coming into my mind. It's the best way I can describe it. A bit like I was merging with another consciousness. I freak out. I'm freaking out. I'm like, Zoe, they're in my brain. I'm like, there's something in my brain. We need to go. So we went back to my house. I'm like, doing some breath work, trying to calm down. I call one of my friends who knows all about, CE5, Stephen Greer, all this sort of thing. And he kind of, told me what to do. He was like, it's your central nervous system. You need to calm down, blah, blah, blah. And my friend was like, listen, I'm going back out there. She was like, whatever's going on out there, I'm going back out there. I was like, okay, fine. So we go out there. At this point, darkness is falling pretty quickly. And we sit on the beach and we see these lights. We're watching these lights for a really long time moving in the sky. And they look like stars in the sky that get really, really bright and then disappear. And that kept happening. Suddenly there was this it was like around the time of a new moon. So in Costa Rica, you have no light. Suddenly there was this kind of beacon of light from behind the forest, like the jungle behind us, which seemed like some sort of mothership, but we couldn't see it clearly. It was like an unknown, undisclosed light source was behind us, and it was kind of flashing like electromagnetic pulses. So this was going on. We were both feeling highly activated, exhilarated, seeing like Egyptian hieroglyphs, symbols, like fully like we were on like psychedelic drugs, and just feeling this enormous sense of unconditional love, bliss, peace. At this point, we know we are interacting with extraterrestrials.
And you're both experiencing this. You could corroborate that with each other afterwards.
Oh my God, dude, this was just the first encounter. I've had multiple encounters. The following week, there were 7 of us, and they holographically shapeshifted into humans in front of us. I'll come to that in a moment. So to cut a long story short, we're there. This is all happening. And there's a light on the ocean that's flashing at us directly and seems to be communicating with us. I'm speaking light language. I'm getting some sort of download of information. And then I had a sense the transmission was complete. And I said to this light, this being, I was like, we're your ambassadors on Earth. Because I'd seen the Stephen Greer documentary at this point. And I was like, we are your ambassadors. Like, we come in peace. Like, you can come over. And then comes over. There's like a light flashing about 100 meters away from us on the shore. I then think, okay, wait, I think this might be a man. This looks like a man. But we're 2 women on the beach alone at night in Latin America. I'm like, okay, we're going. It's not up for discussion. My whole central nervous system was in a state of fear. We get on my quad bike and I put the lights on. This light is a blue light, and we recorded this, by the way. We have a recording of this. This light is getting closer and closer and closer to us, and it's a blue light flashing at us. We can see it has some sort of body. It bilocates, moves up into the sky, and gets closer and closer to us, and we realize it's an actual alien being. Zoe's recording the whole thing. A coconut falls out of the tree and hits me, and I start screaming, and we leave. So
Wow.
that was the first encounter. The second encounter was a week later, and there were 7 of
Excuse
us.
me, did the recording show anything? The video
Yeah.
recording?
Yeah. It's got, you can see the light. Because it's on an iPhone and it's pitch black and it's just the light, it's not really. Dude, I have other videos of UFOs and stuff that are incontrovertible. This is, I mean, whatever.
Okay.
My friend ran this through some software so you can sort of detect light, if that makes sense. You can see sort of light contrast and you can see its legs and its body.
Wow. I just have to parentheses here, sidetrack. No, not a sidetrack. Another synchronicity. I listened just yesterday also to a program with Ross Coulthart at News Nation, and he was in Sedona, Arizona, going out with a lady who has had 1,800 excursions out into the specific area, a mountain called Secret Mountain, believe it or not, above which these kinds of lights, these kinds of orbs, these kinds of behaving in exactly the same way that you're describing, are showing themselves every night. You don't. She said, I've had 1,800 excursions here now, and not in a single one has there not been anything. So, I mean, she's also seen bigger ships and bigger crafts a few times, but every time there are these orbs, and they are pulsing, and they are kind of, coming up out of the ground, pulsing a little bit, and then moving, zigzagging, and then disappearing. So very much like you described the lights that you saw before you saw this entity, this figure. Sorry.
Yeah. No, don't apologize. Yeah, I mean, I think the more disclosures, the more people speak up about this, and the more like data that we can accrue, the quicker we will accept this as part of reality.
Yeah.
Because the data is all corroborated. We're all corroborating each other's data.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week there were 7 of us. Basically, I was holding these salons of ideas at my house at the time, and a bunch of us, a bunch of my friends turned up at my house for one of these salons, and we all just knew that the salon wasn't going to happen, and we were going to go to the beach together. Because we told them, Zoe and I had told them about this experience, and we were all ready. We were just like, we could feel the energy of them almost. It was like a calling. So we went to the beach. One of our friends is like a professional meditator. Like, he lived in a monastery for 3 years. So he was meditating, chanting Om. We all held hands, closed our eyes, and envisioned or felt cosmic consciousness. So love, peace, etc. Within 15 minutes, 2 blue orbs appeared in the sky. They literally sink down, come around the bay. They're like hovering, coming around, like these floating blue orbs coming around the bay. They're over the sand. They're like flashing their light up into the jungle, coming closer and closer towards us. We're all like flooded with a sense of like love and exhilaration and beauty, and they're getting closer and closer, and it's like so intense. And then the weirdest thing happened. This is the weirdest thing that has happened in my life to date. When they get past us, they're like coming closer and closer towards us, and suddenly 7 men wearing camping gear, like the most inappropriate gear, the most inappropriate attire for Costa Rica you could imagine. One of them had like a North Face jacket. One of them was carrying a log on its back. It was so weird. Men, humans.
Yeah.
We all just go into freeze. My friend starts nervously laughing, and I said, "What?" I said, "What is happening?" I said, "I'm traumatized." I said, "I feel traumatized." Because I then suddenly thought, we've just hallucinated the whole thing. They're just people. And this is, but this is all happening in the space of a few seconds. Because your brain, okay, let me give you a quote from the philosopher Henri Bergson. The eyes can only see what the mind can comprehend.
Exactly.
Yeah? So your brain...
It's not seeing is believing, it's believing is seeing in a way.
Right, thank you. That's perfect, exactly. Now, because this universe is actually holographic, I mean, this is like David Bohm's idea that it's actually all a holographic projection from the implicate order.
Yeah.
This is really scientifically corroborated. It actually makes complete sense. These are holographic beings, and they holographically shape-shifted into humans, who then, we're watching them, they then turn and walk onto the ocean like Jesus Christ.
What?
And
underwater?
Yeah, and then dematerialize into balls of light. Interestingly, I could see more of them than some of my friends. Some of my friends couldn't see them at all. Zoe could see like balls of light, and I could see the outline of their body. And they were like these tall beings of blue light, tall, really elongated. I couldn't see them in high definition, but I could see them standing. And we start telepathically communicating with them. I was the one communicating with them, I think because I'd been in Costa Rica for so long, communicating with them for a couple of years already, without knowing who I was communicating with, you see? Every time I'd see these things in the sky and speak light language, I was speaking with these beings. And I said, "Where are you from?" And they said, "Sirius."
Okay.
Immediately. Yeah. And they were communicating with us. A lot of the information, it was almost like downloads that I couldn't fully articulate in words, but it was about them wanting to help humanity. They knew who we were, they come in peace. We're here to fulfill a destiny. Like, everything has been leading up to this moment. We are supported. They're from the future, like all of this information. And that changed my life forever. I mean, how can you come back from that experience, And one of the most difficult things about this whole thing is telling people and them not believing you. Yeah, being called crazy. Do you know how many times people have called me mad?
Well, it's no wonder that people don't tell others about these kinds of experiences. All kinds of spiritually transformative experiences, like near-death experiences as well, out-of-body experiences. People don't talk about it. Many just intuitively sense that they will be called crazy, and maybe they try once or twice and then they stop, and they're silent for 20 years.
Anyway, there's been other like instances with UFOs and stuff, but I think I've given you like enough info. Those were the most significant encounters and direct encounters, so
completely fascinating. And I mean, I believe every word of what you're saying, of course, and I think most of the audience here will too, because I mean, they're used to hearing these kinds of stories. So I think it's just marvelous that you are sharing it. And as you say, we need to take this seriously. We need to understand that this is happening, and that reality is not what we have been led to believe it is.
Yeah.
So you said that you have gotten downloads and you've gotten a lot of information, that much of the information that much of the knowledge that you're conveying concerning philosophical matters and humanity and where society is going on, all of that. You hinted that you gotten some of that information from these entities, these non-human experiences?
Yes. Well, I almost, the way I see it, we all move through different dimensions, incarnation cycles. Time isn't linear, and this is a multidimensional universe. And I think as we move through, as like kind of monadic fragments of consciousness, as we move through lives, again, in a non-linear sequence, in a kind of simultaneous sequence, we are developing our own skill sets and resources that in particular lives can be activated. So, I think I have the kind of mind that I have, and I have the aptitude that I have to comprehend these ideas because it was planned that way.
Yes, right.
Right. So it's almost like I'm now remembering, to come back to this, where we started in this conversation, and divine remembrance and the return to beauty. I'm just remembering stuff that I already know. And I think, again, this is a multidimensional universe with different creator beings on different levels of time, like archetypal divine beings who create other beings, who create other beings. We ourselves are creator beings. So it's like this kind of divine cascade, if you will. So, I think these extraterrestrials are sort of akin to angels, at least the ones I encountered. I think there are other ones with their own agenda that's not necessarily, it's kind of no bueno. But the ones I encountered are definitely really benevolent and are really supportive, and who we can interact with and who will give us information. But it's almost like they're helping us remember what we already know. And we might work with certain star systems. And by the way, like, I very much believe that stars are conscious, like they are highly intelligent beings who are all like in communication with each other. Like, this whole universe is just pulsing with intelligence and consciousness at every level. So, when we receive certain downloads, it's like, that's our soul's code. That James Hillman, the depth psychologist who worked with Jung, he wrote a book called The Soul's Code. And it's this idea that we're all born with a divine blueprint. And I teach this in the Temple of Truth. My inaugural course is called The Doors of Destiny. It's like, we don't make our destiny. We don't decide what we're going to do. It is imprinted in our template, right? Our like transcendental template of who we are. And it's destined to be realized. Like, can you imagine a reality where, Beethoven didn't become Beethoven, or David Bowie didn't become David Bowie? It's like, no, it's like, it was always going to pan out that way.
Yeah.
And I think...
What about free will then? That's the natural follow-up question to these kinds of discussions.
Yes, yeah. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. It's a kind of paradoxical both and, where two opposites are reconciled. So everything is underscored by free will, because we choose. We all have agency. We're all divine beings. We all belong to the divine, and the divine chose to lose its memory, to re-experience itself. So at a higher level of reality, we chose to come down and experience these difficulties and to play out this unfolding drama. But the script is already written. I do not believe we have choice points where it's like, if I turn left out my door, I might meet the love of my life and my whole life goes off in this direction. And if I don't, then I get hit by a car and I die. Like,
sliding doors.
No, it's like sliding doors. Like, no, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you actually really think about it, it doesn't make any sense that we could all be making these different choices, and it frankly could go anyway, because guess what? That is very random.
Yeah,
that's very random. It's very chaotic.
Nightmarish, really.
It's nightmarish. Like, so it's so funny when I tell people my theory and my view, and they're like, they feel it to be contracting because they then think they don't have a choice in their life. I'm like, yeah, but what if what's been destined for you is the very highest outcome, and you just need to relax?
Yeah,
you just need to relax and
that's the true free will in a sense.
And the irony is that when you believe that, everything then, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, that everything then works out in your favor because you're in flow, because you trust.
Yeah.
And you're not and you're not worrying about what could have happened or what should have happened, because it was all perfect. Even the really shitty stuff was exactly what was meant to happen for your highest growth. So
believe it or not, I was actually listening to Alan Watts also yesterday saying exactly what you're saying now.
Really?
Yeah, it's always a bliss to listen to Alan Watts. So this is just fantastic. I agree completely. So let's talk a little bit about society and where we're going. I started by asking about whether we are living in crucial times or not. And we kind of went off on a tangent there, which was beautiful. I love it. So things are happening on the political stage, of course, today, geopolitically, and many things are happening, and we don't have to go maybe down to that nitty-gritty stuff. But can you see, if we try to look at it from the lens of us perhaps being in a period of some kind of awakening, can you see any good examples today of political leadership or polity where spiritual values are applied in some way? Such an approach seems a bit far away, but maybe you can find some examples of that.
I don't know if I can. Probably there are, to a certain extent. I mean, for example, in Switzerland, I'm not saying Switzerland is a paradigm of utopia, because it's
a lot about Switzerland. You live there partly,
yeah. I mean, I have been spending a lot of time here, but this is not. I'm a British citizen primarily, so Switzerland's not my home, and I think actually having spent some time here, it's been really interesting to observe a different culture. What I really like about it, there's a couple of things I really like about it. First of all, it's a lot more decentralized.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something this is something I think is really necessary and really good, is a decentralized distribution of power. They never had aristocracy in Switzerland. It was always been egalitarian, quite parochial as a result, but egalitarian nonetheless, right? So that kind of class hierarchy is just not embedded in this culture. So you get a lot more civic responsibility and an egalitarian ethos and a sense of distributed power and fairness. And each canton, like each district, has its own tax laws. When you pay tax, it tends to be distributed within your canton, within your area. So it's not like being in the UK or many other countries where you're paying a federal tax, you're paying the government. So the UK has like 75 million people. That is a lot of people. Okay.
65 maybe?
Sorry?
Or maybe 65?
I think it's more than 65.
Okay. We don't have
at this point. At this point, it's definitely...
Maybe it's 68.
I think it's quoted around...
Anyway, it doesn't matter. People can check it up for themselves.
Well, the thing is, there's probably people who are there under the radar. That's a lot of people.
That could be the thing, yeah.
It's a lot of people for quite a small country. We can agree on that.
Yes.
So when you give money to the government, that money, you don't know where your money is going. It's actually being wasted. A lot of it's being wasted. You have like, I don't know how many people are in the Houses of Parliament. Probably like, let's just say like 300 people. And then you have one prime minister and a little cabinet of like 12 people running tens and tens and tens of millions of people. How like, in what
Who came up with that idea?
But like, it just is so stupid. It's so patently stupid. How can a tiny bunch of people, this centralized power, possibly govern that many people with different needs, different communities? It just doesn't make sense to me. So what I like about Switzerland is it's a lot more decentralized.
And they have all these referendums and I think it's also sympathetic. I talked about Switzerland a few times and written about it in this respect as well, because I think it's very, very interesting and very, very a good thing that nobody ever knew the name of the person running Switzerland or being prime minister or president or anything. Nobody. Ask people. Nobody knows the name of those people. And that's a good sign.
It's so true. Another thing about it I really like, which is integral to an ideal society, is it's safe. Compared to anywhere else I've been, it's safe. You can leave your house unlocked. You can leave your car unlocked. No one's going to steal shit. Because everyone's abundant here. I've not seen one homeless person here. Even if they're not super rich, people are fine. People, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are not in a state of poverty and scarcity. There aren't these massive social problems that you get in many other countries.
And they have a high proportion of immigrants, don't they?
I have yet to see one immigrant here.
Well, I think they have about a million or so guest workers or people from other countries.
Right.
But I think they gain pretty. I mean, they make pretty much money in comparison with what they would make in other countries, but they're still... But which city are you in?
I'm on Lago Maggiore, just by the Italian border. So most of the so-called like immigrant workers are just coming in from northern Italy. Mm. So culturally, it's not that different.
Yeah.
The one thing, they're very controlling about who comes in and who can become a resident here, from what I understand. Like you have to have a lot of wealth behind you to be able to just become a resident in Switzerland. And one of the upsides is, it's really safe. The downside is there's no creativity or cultural diversity. And I love that about England. The immigration that we've had in our country has led to a lot of like social problems, but it's also led to massive cultural flourishing and diversity. And, it's super exciting. Yeah. I love the diversity. I come from London. I love coming from a multicultural society, but with anything, there's advantages and disadvantages. Yeah. And these questions you're asking me are really complex and really difficult to solve. And I don't have the answers. I just how to get there. What I do have a sense of is what it looks like, but I don't know how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I kind of think that, well, what we're talking about here, or we're going to talk about more, I guess, is how we're going to we were talking about the merger between science and spirituality before, but also politics and spirituality has to merge in some way. There cannot be any difference if we are to live a true life, a life that is true to our essence. I don't have many good examples either of politics or polity that tries to integrate spirituality in politics, but I have mentioned a couple of times Václav Havel, the Czech president in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him and what.
No, I'm saying like I am, but continue.
Yeah, well, he was the president of Czechoslovakia before it was divided between Czechia and Slovakia, and he was a writer. He was one of the dissidents in Czechoslovakia, Charta 77 signatory, and so he was a poet and he was a writer, which I think helps in this respect. But he became the president, and he took on that task, and he held. I especially venerate a speech that he held in Philadelphia in 1994, which was amazing. I think you can find it online, because he was talking about humanity's the hope for humanity, or what will save humanity, is that we have to transcend. We have to transcend our humanness. We have to level up in a way, or become awake, become aware. And he was talking also about the cosmos and our place in the cosmos and all. I mean, you never hear politicians talk about those things.
No, you do not.
So I think it was just amazing. So he's one leader, and I often say that we don't really need leaders with capital L anymore.
Yeah.
That was something that maybe we needed a couple of thousand years ago, maybe not, probably not even then, but maybe in a society where it was more harsh, more hierarchical, maybe we needed leaders with capital L. We don't need that anymore. What we need are great inspirers and very skilled administrators. Those are the two categories that I think we need, not leaders with capital L. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's such a genius observation and statement, and I couldn't agree more. As you'll know, because you saw my the Mystics and Scientists conference where I presented on anarchy, and my definition of anarchy, and I think how we can recalibrate and re-understand anarchy, because it's really misunderstood. People associate it with chaos and mayhem and violence and so on, and that's not really what it's supposed to be. So the term anarch can be translated from the Greek, because it actually means like without a leader, or without like an originator, can be translated as leader of a leaderlessness, which is what I think is what you're talking about. Exactly what you're talking about is not a leader with a capital L, but beacons almost. And again, it's distributed power. It's not hierarchical, saying these people are better than. It's saying, hey, this human in their template, and his or her template is designed, their design is to administrate and to do it beautifully and elegantly. This person is designed to be an orator or a poet or an artist. This person is amazing at designing incredible architecture. This person's amazing at designing health systems, right? And then it's like, okay, and then the self-organizing intelligence that is the universe, which is that God consciousness, which I think is what this Czech guy is speaking to. It's the transcending your humanness and tuning with the cosmic current. Yeah. You then very naturally, effortlessly, easily self-organize. You don't have, democracy is a kind of, it kind of works, but it's actually not ideal, because there's a fallout, and it's like, it's kind of, it's pretty basic. Like, it's the best we have, but we need to move beyond democracy, because we've seen democracy and what it entails, and it's not sufficient. In this paradigm, and this is a new paradigm, and it does necessitate a higher level of consciousness, and that's wherein lies the nub. In this new paradigm, where people are attuned and vibrating at a higher level and in resonance with God consciousness, everyone just organizes themselves into this sort of harmonic structure, where everyone's fulfilling their divine template to create a society that is safe, abundant, beautiful. Those are the three sort of tenets. It's safe, because safety is basically freedom. Yeah, that's what it is. If you're safe, you're free to, a woman is free to walk on the street and not worry about being raped. If and that they're all closely connected, because if you're abundant and there's abundance, you're free to create and not survive.
But sometimes freedom and safety are described as opposites.
Why?
Because safety means that you are but this is from the old paradigm, probably. In a hierarchical system, you rely on the leaders and the people in charge, and you just you accept that you can't do anything you want, but they ensure that they make sure that you're safe.
Well, that's called the monopoly.
They have the military and the police force and all that, and you just rely on them to keep the order, but you can't, which also means that you can't do just anything, because they have some modicum of control over you and what you're doing and all that.
Yeah, but that's not safety, though, is it? I'm talking about safety that comes from within, because everyone's behaving properly. What you've just referred to is called the monopoly on violence by the German political philosopher Max Weber, which is basically this idea. It's that exact premise that the government will say, and the government is the Leviathan, what Hobbes called the Leviathan. It's this like monstrous being that has total control, and they say to you, you hand over all of your power, and in return, we will keep you safe, and we are allowed to deploy violence, and we're doing it because do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's not real safety. Real safety does give us freedom, because if you're in a state of danger, if your life, your livelihood, your whatever is in danger, how are you free? You're not free.
But it's also, I understand exactly what you're saying. But on the other hand, if you're going to go esoteric and philosophical and spiritual here, you live in the world that you believe you live in. So we come into that, realm of mental constructs and what you think is dangerous out there and what you think is going to happen to you. I mean, this is a bit of a, controversial perhaps to talk about, but if you believe you're going to be assaulted when you go out, you probably will. to put it bluntly.
Sure. I mean, I agree with you that, your frequency and your belief systems do shape your reality. However, I'm also pragmatic. I wouldn't put myself in dangerous situations because of my frequency.
Yeah.
When you're on a lower frequency, you tend to find yourself in dangerous situations around dangerous people because you're attracting it in. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean those dangerous situations therefore don't exist. It's more that you don't expose yourself to them. In London, I'm not going to put my laptop on the dashboard of my car. Why would I do that? It's like, I know there's people in London who are in a state of scarcity. I know there's organized crime there. It's actually becoming a very dangerous city. I don't go around in fear, but I am going to act with intelligence and accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's wise words. Pragmatism is a pretty good thing, actually, in this context, as you said.
Yeah.
So where were we?
Well, we were talking about creating this ideal society and
politics being the art of attunement, not the art of enforcement, as you said on the conference.
Exactly,
and you said also that order doesn't require laws; it requires resonance, which is a beautiful thing to say.
Well, I think that's the next paradigm and worldview for us to step into, is understanding that this is a vibrational cosmos. Yeah. I mean, and as we're so far away from what I can see on the news. I mean, I don't really expose myself to the news, but I do a bit just to kind of keep up with what's going on. We're so far away from like a leader standing up and talking about vibration and beauty and healing intergenerational trauma and designing, beneficent systems and, like a meta religion. Like, you know what I mean? I just don't know. I think the whole thing has to sort of crumble.
I think so too.
And it will. Yeah. We're not supposed to be improving the current systems. We're supposed to be building new ones.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't get to choose exactly how the world is going to change, because we might have very nice, airy-fairy ideas of what should happen instead of what is happening. But we don't really get to decide that. So, as you say, if it's going to crumble, it's going to crumble in certain ways that we might not like, but like we're probably seeing in some corners of the world right now. And I also don't listen very much to the news. Exactly as you say, I want to be informed. Basically, I mean, I have these little notifications on my phone, but other than that, I don't subscribe to any newspapers or anything. I don't follow the news in the television or so. But because I've been immersed in it for 25 years. I used to be a news journalist, which is ironic. So I have been brainwashed for 20 years. I've been there, done that. I was, bathing. I was swimming in it 24/7.
You were in the belly of the beast.
I was in the belly of the beast, you might say.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I'm a recovering news journalist. I say sometimes.
Wow.
So, but I've also always been interested in spiritual matters, and I've had a spiritual streak, or whatever you want to call it, since I was a kid. So, and I've known that we're more than this physical body. So it was a bit of a cognitive dissonance when I worked with it, but I kind of compartmentalized it and did that, and had these other ideas at the same time. But since 5 years back now, I'm freelancing and doing other stuff.
Well, it probably actually places you, really well to do what you're doing now, because you understand the mechanics of the whole thing. You understand a lot about that paradigm and about how it works. So I think that, that puts you in a really good position. Actually.
Yeah, it says on my website that I'm a bridge between.
Right, beautiful, but you are. No, but you are, and I think that's fantastic. Again, you're playing out your template. You were supposed to go into that framework and be a news journalist to accrue data. That was part of your training, almost. I sort of see a lot of us who are part of this awakening, and, because this podcast is part of the awakening. What you're doing, you're distributing information to people. I do the same with my podcast, with my research, with whatever, and you needed to live the life you led before in order to do that, right? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I can see it that way now, more clearly, or ever clearer, actually. And I think you're right. I had to walk that path. And I can see now that that's probably my role.
I think, radical acceptance of our souls unfolding is so crucial to our full realization. And I know from firsthand experience, this is what causes a lot of anguish in people. And that's what I teach in the Temple of Truth. And I'm really, really passionate about it, because for many, many years, I was sort of wandering this earth in a state of absolute despair, an existential crisis, not knowing who I was, not knowing why I was here, not understanding society, like very confused and very perturbed. And it was only through the spiritual awakening I had when I was 27, 28, which was a spontaneous awakening, that I woke up and I knew I was supposed to do a PhD, and it set me on this path. And I remember it was for this whole year, it was 2018 was the year. I just remembered everything. It was I remembered who I was, what I came here to do, the nature of the universe. And I was like, oh my God. And so because I know what it is to live a life that's kind of devoid of meaning, but to know deeply I was here for something more, and to know that there was more to this universe than we've been led to believe, but to not have the framework to understand it, I'm now super passionate about helping others understand that. And for them to know there is no such thing as wasted time. If it could have been different, it would have been. If it was supposed to be different, it would have been. We're shaped, we come in with a template, and then we're shaped by our environment and our childhood experiences. And then that leads us to make decisions and become a certain way, which quite frankly is outside of our control. And it's when you awaken and you start remembering and you start attuning yourself with a higher consciousness, your destiny, which is always benevolent, will start unfolding. And it unfolds with greater experiential ease the higher you vibrate.
Yeah. Many people say that, and this is also hard pill to swallow for people who are not spiritually inclined, perhaps, that everything is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be, because it couldn't be any other way, like you say. because you're here now and you've done what you've done and you are going to do what you're going to do, and there is only the now anyway. So how could it be any other way? It's impossible when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, the universe is perfect. And again, this brings up the problem of evil. So a lot of people find this quite difficult, because when you make a statement like that about everything being perfect, that means the human trafficking is perfect. That means all the poverty is perfect. And again, this necessitates a paradoxical reconciliation to say that none of that stuff is okay. It's not right, and it's not okay, and it needs to be resolved and overcome and transcended and actually eliminated. But that journey of experience and then transcending is perfect. That's what was, planned, and at a higher level, because the universe is multi-layered and multi-leveled. People don't understand this. They look around them at this 3D reality and they're like, yeah, this is reality. No, it's not. Some weird dream that we wake up from. We're like, oh, what? Yeah. And then, to be honest, I think we just wake up. And again, this is wild speculation, because how do I know? But I think when we die, we wake up and we wake up to the next level. But there's other levels beyond that. That's not like the afterlife. It's like, that's just the next level where you you get cleansed. Yeah,
and you can get stuck there on that level.
Yeah, and, I just think there's so many levels. There's so many levels. I mean, this universe is wild. It's actually just wild that we're here.
I spoke to a Chinese-British researcher called Simon Duan.
I know Simon.
You know Simon, of course. Yeah, he's associated with the SMN as well, Galileo Commission. And wonderful man. And he's, as you know, studying this, the reality being a simulation. Like
a cosmic computer. He talks about the Platonic computer,
Yeah, and he says, I forgot my question about that just because of that. But he said, one thing we discussed that was kind of interesting, and everything was really, but is that one indication or proof, if you will, that this reality is not base reality, is that everything changes, that nothing is permanent, that stuff crumble and get old and disappear, and that we die, and the bodies get old and die. That's evidence that this cannot be the base reality, the real reality, so to speak. It has to be on some different level. So this has to be a simulation. So what's your take on the simulation idea? Maybe it is a simulation, but a purposeful one. I mean, people have.
I don't like the word simulation.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like the word simulation because it's sort of technological.
It sounds technological, but it's just a word.
It's just a word, but words confer meaning.
A dream, then, or an illusion, or.
I prefer the word dream.
Yeah.
Again, as someone who studied literature, if you say it's just a word, if you say to a glass of water, I hate you, every day for 30 days, you literally scramble the molecular structure of the water.
I know.
And so you could just say that's just a word. Words.
Sorry, I will never say that again.
No, but it's
I know
a
what you mean.
preference.
Yeah.
The thing is I just don't like, I'm not saying it's wrong, I just don't like the word simulation because it suggests something artificial. And I don't, that's what I don't like about it. It just doesn't resonate with me. Again, like words of vibration doesn't resonate with me. I much prefer dream because dream is poetic. It's poetic, and it's sort of like, again, it suggests the layers, because when we go to sleep at night, we dream. And while we're in the dream, unless we are having a lucid dream, you're in that dream and that is reality. So again, the word dream, it confers within it that sense of a cascading hierarchy of levels, which are illusory and which we wake up from. So I much prefer the idea of a cosmic dream.
Yeah, it is like also, in the film Inception, actually.
Yeah, which is brilliant.
Dreams within dreams. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. Simon Duan and I actually really agree on this. And I once spoke about this in a lecture, and he reached out to me, which the idea of the universe is like a series of Russian dolls, a nested hierarchy.
Yeah.
So he loves that idea and thinks the same. So we actually ended up kind of connecting over that. So he and I do share many similar ideas. He just uses different languaging. Like I would never refer to a cosmic computer. Like consciousness, for a start, is non-computational. We know that. But again, this is semantics, and that's what's great about academic debate is you can debate these things, but it's not really relevant. So yes, I do think this is a quote unquote simulation / dream, very much like Plato's analogy of the cave. Again, this is not my idea. This is Plato's idea. And, many great thinkers have shared this and intuited this. Hence why, if we all shared a vision of an ideal reality, we could create it. Because what happens if you're lucid in a dream? What happens if you're lucid in a dream? What happens? You can create whatever you want.
Yeah.
You suddenly wake up in a dream and you're like, oh, I'm in a dream. Guess what? I can fly.
Do you have lucid dreams?
Sometimes, not very often. But I don't work on. I don't do dream yoga like the Tibetan monks do dream yoga, where they literally use their dreams as like a domain of awakening and self-realization, and to dream lucidly. I don't do that, but I have had lucid dreams and they've been very, very informative.
Yeah, I wish I had lucid dream, but I know that you can train that.
Yeah, exactly.
In practice, so I might do that because it seems very constructive. I think creative, and I get frustrated every morning when I wake up from a dream, and I kind of forget what I was doing, and I think that is reality every time, and then I wake up into this reality, and I suddenly remember this, and it's kind of takes a couple of minutes for me to really adjust to the fact that I'm back in this reality. It is very dreamlike as well, especially those first 2-3 minutes. It is dreamlike. It takes, you have to have your first cup of coffee or something before you're actually back into the illusion that this is where you're supposed to be and this is where you're at all the time.
I do recommend writing down your dreams. The more you write your dreams down, the better your dream recall will be. Yeah. I mean, I've got my dream diary right here. I've been writing down my dreams for years. Sometimes I go through phases where I don't, but generally I do. You can also try, like, I don't know if you have your phone near you when you sleep. I do. It's on airplane mode. But if I wake up in the middle of the night and I've had a dream, I will just make a voice memo and I'll just do that. And then it's done. And then in the morning, you would never have remembered it. But the moment you start doing that, you basically are creating new neural pathways for dream recall.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. And the more you do
there's a difference between waking up in the middle of the night from a dream and waking up in the morning. With these morning dreams are, not, I don't think, very important, if you might put it that way. They're kind of confusing and strange. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, but that hasn't actually happened for a long time. But when I was younger, I had those dreams, the big dreams, as I think Jung called them.
Right.
And I wrote them down. So I've actually written a couple of short stories based on a couple of those dreams. Amazing. But that was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So it has happened, but it's been a long time now.
The guy who discovered the periodic table, and I say discovered because he literally discovered it. He didn't invent it. Was revealed to him in a dream.
It was there all the time.
I forget his name, but it was revealed to him in a dream. Now, the other night, this was actually the last dream I had. So I woke up in the morning and I came fresh out of this dream. I think the quality of your dreams is all to do with what stage of the cycle of sleep you're in. If you come fresh out of REM, you're going to be, that's like you come fresh out of the dream. So it depends on when you went to sleep, how, the quality of your sleep. So I was in a class in my dream, and I literally had this. I always write on this paper, this kind of paper, and I always use a purple pen. And I literally, in my purple pen, wrote down, and I'd love to hear what you make of this and what your listeners make of this, because I've just handed in a paper for my PhD on causality, synchronicity, like retrocausality and synchronicity.
Oh, Julia Mossbridge's theme.
Oh yeah, what?
Okay. Never mind.
No, okay. You'll have to send me some info on that.
Sure.
But yeah, so I'm sort of reconfiguring causality as retrocausality and synchronicities as belonging to like a retrocausal order of destined, like a destined future, and synchronicities as like signs from the future to guide us onwards. Anyway, so I saw in this dream, I wrote down on this piece of paper order is a higher causality.
Fascinating. Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to work out what it means, but for me, it was the universe giving me information about the ontology of causality.
Causality is a higher order. You could turn it around there.
Well, the thing is what about linear, like efficient causes, which is linear cause and effect? Like I dropped the bowl.
I think it goes both ways. Well, if I come up with something intelligent, I'll email you.
Cool.
I had another discussion with another philosopher a couple of years ago on the podcast, Bernardo Kastrup.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. He's very interested in Jung as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And we had a slight disagreement, not during the actual conversation, I think, so much, but I pondered what he had, his answers to one of my questions afterwards, and I came to the conclusion that I actually disagree with Bernardo Castro, which was a bit frightening. But
that's fine. No, that's fine.
Because
he's a human. You're a human.
I know. Yeah. You're right. And I have my experiences. He has his. And
what was it about?
It was about whether. I mean, I had this idea that we can't really create anything that doesn't already exist in the quote unquote base reality. So one example would be that internet is a pale version of the Akashic records.
I agree with you. I love that.
And that we can't, because we were talking about earlier that we are probably, we're all one and we are part of the all-encompassing consciousness. And when we think that we invent things or create things or come up with things, it's actually something that we download. So
I agree with you.
Everybody has downloads, I guess, even if they don't realize it. They think, oh, I came up with this idea. Well, was it really you? Or it was you in some sense, but it was also me and everybody else.
Yes.
So I think that there is everything that is potentially possible to create is already there. The instant that somebody, some part of the all-encompassing intelligence, consciousness comes up with an idea, it is there. It is already there, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we can't really invent anything that isn't already there. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you 1,000,000%. To go back to earlier in this conversation, the angel is already there.
Yeah.
In the marble, and we didn't design it. You know what I mean? It's like like God consciousness, and this is very Platonic. What you're saying, it's like nothing that we create is truly original because it must belong to a higher form that already exists. And I think this does correspond to my theory on time, of time being simultaneous. God, like the Alpha and Omega, is not bound to linear time. Like, do not tell me that the divine consciousness doesn't know what's going to happen in the future, or indeed that it's not already there, because it is everything. It is all time happening now.
Yeah.
And in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung, in so many instances, talks about simultaneous time. And when he has this near-death experience, he says, I saw the past, present, and future all there at once, all happening now. If the future is happening now, it necessarily must already be decided. He doesn't say, I saw infinite timelines all happening now. Yeah. He saw the future as done, as is now.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, also when we create something, we're also pulling from that future code, which is the God code. Like, there's many ways you can sort of start dissecting this, but I agree with you is that it's not like we're in this emergent place through what is emerging has never been done before. It might never have been realized in this space-time continuum in which we're experiencing the unfolding. The unfolding through our consciousness is happening for the first time. But at a higher level, it's already happened. But you and I we are in coordinates of space-time now. We are. Like, that's a fact. You're probably in Sweden right now. I'm in Switzerland. It's whatever the date is today, the 21st of May, 2025. Like, those are particular coordinates in a space-time matrix at one level of this multidimensional universe. So we're at the cutting edge of that unfoldment. But at higher levels, everything that I'm saying to you right now has already been said, has already been thought of. You know what I mean?
And it's already history, because what you just said is gone.
Precisely.
And it's, I think, time is probably part of the so-called simulation. It's part of the program.
Exactly.
The program. And it has to be there there has to be this illusion of time for this to work, for this game to work, because there has to be an inertia.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Cause and effect in order for us to learn things.
Exactly. Which speaks back to Simon Dwan, the fact that everything is in flux, you know, in this sort of this perpetual state of unfoldment and change, is that it's like a lower level of, it's becoming, which is a lower level of being. The book I'm writing right now is called Being and Becoming. And it's about this. Being and becoming is an ancient sort of idea. You have Parmenides, who said everything is being, i.e. like still perfection, and Heraclitus, who says everything is becoming, everything is in perpetual flux. But the reality is they're both true.
Are you into astrology, or are you interested?
Yeah, big time. Yeah. I studied archetypal astrology with Richard Tarnas.
Yeah, that's right. It's on your website, right? Because, I mean, that's the same. You're talking about everything already having happened and happening at the same time. And this is a little bit like I see astrology as well, that space-time in this dream, every point in space-time has its own quality, so to speak. And astrology tells you that there are certain points in space-time will have certain qualities, and certain things will be, there is a potential for certain things when there are certain aspects of this happening. And we can calculate now with the computers that we have, we can calculate hundreds of years in advance that certain periods will entail, certain kinds of risks or possibilities, or, all about this. And this ties in with what you're saying about time being just one thing I mean, future and past happening at the same time.
Simultaneous time. Yeah. And, the fact that we're born with a natal chart, for me, that's like the hymn sheet that we then sing throughout our lives. Our consciousness being the song. And this is very Pythagorean, the music of the spheres. Now, a lot of astrologers would say that, it's not determined. Archetypes are it's more like they are guides or attractors or influences that shape but don't delimit or define, because maybe that feels too contracted. But according to my theory, there are no alternative or possible timelines. There's just one. It's just one turn of the wheel. Does that make sense? So even though, and again, this is like
make more sense than these theories about the multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. For me, that just feels like the one turn of the wheel is a multiverse, though. In its own way. It's not like there are parallel universes, like parallel versions of you and me. Like, that doesn't feel very beautiful to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. And that's where I agree totally with Bernardo Castro, because he says that's a childish idea and stupid idea.
It's not beautiful. It's not beautiful. It's not poetic. It just feels quite chaotic and
technical,
sort of scrambled.
Technocratic in a way.
Yeah, it feels very scrambled to me. But so in terms of archetypes and astrology and the unfoldment and how our lives are shaped by these archetypal influences that are encoded in our astrological template. Again, like I said, a lot of astrologers would say that this is more of a guide rather than anything sort of fixed. Yeah. But I think, again, both are true. It's not that archetypes are fixed. They do have a very elastic quality to them. And every time they appear, there's a sort of multivalent uniqueness to how they manifest in that moment. But I still think that malleability is already decided. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's quite a complex idea I've just put down. So let me know if it makes sense.
Did you say again? Malleability is
a sort of
encoded in the,
like, if something's malleable, it's you can sculpt it differently. It's elastic, it's plastic, it's
preordained, it's
so if something's malleable, it's not fixed.
Yeah,
it's like clay. Clay is very malleable. You can change it and shape it with your hands very easily.
So that's your way of saying that astrology, like what many astrologers would say, that what is going to happen isn't chiseled in stone. It's
exactly, because astrology suggests, by its very nature, like all these transits are coming and they're archetypal, that they are making things happen the way things unfold is because of these archetypal influences. However, a lot of famous astrologers like Pam Gregory, who I am obsessed with.
Yeah. I love her. I've had her as a guest as well.
Have you? I'm obsessed with Pam Gregory. I listen to every single update. She's
she's wonderful.
Oh my God, she's such an elevated being.
Yeah.
She does say, and this is just like my philosophical perspective, which is slightly different to hers. She does say, there are timelines and choice points. We have the capacity to make choices that will determine different outcomes. And I'm like, well, yes, but it's not like there are possible other alternative timelines either, though. Does that make sense? And she sees the archetypes as sort of more like general guiding influences as opposed to revealing the predestined script. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Let's hear what the audience says. Please let us know in the
something to mull over. Something
to mull over. Arabella, what is it that will precipitate our great awakening and transformation now? Is it the ongoing UAP disclosure process, or is it something else?
I mean, I think it's multifaceted. I think the alien thing is part of it because these galactic beings want to help us. Again, like there are nefarious off-world intelligences, but we're not going to focus on those. There are so many highly, unimaginably benevolent beings who wish to help us, not in an intervening way, but like whose love and intelligence is a resource. I'm having a deja vu right now as I talk to you, by the way. It's like, for me, when I have deja vus, that's always like an alignment with future time.
Yeah.
It's like all time, like converging. Anyway, these beings are here to help us. So the more of us who are open, at the very least, to their existence, the more they can participate, the more they can co-create with us. Because we're saying, hey guys, we want to evolve. We want your help. We are here to instigate intergalactic peace. We are willing, like we are humans who are awake and aware. We belong to one cosmic family. Help us. And they will say, great, we're here for you. We want to help you because we're so loving. We want to create peace and compassion across the universe. That's in everyone's interest, by the way, like across the multiverse, across this interdimensional grid of reality, we want things to be coherent. If you split the atom on Earth, that creates like massive fallout on the other side of the universe because everything's entangled, right? So yes, ET involvement is going to be part of the evolution because they have technologies also. They have a lot of advanced information that could really help us. But
is it the ETs or is it the Ts, the terrestrial ones, or both?
I like to call them the galactics.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they haven't been on Earth. They don't even, they could even precede us on Earth. I think they are like master geneticists, but that I don't want to get off tangent too much. The galactic beings, yes, this is a huge part of it, and people disclosing it. And Pam is so good for this. She has so many people on her podcast talking about these beings. What else is going to be part of it? I think COVID, I'm not like an apocalyptic sort of catastrophist, but I do think COVID in some ways was a bit of a insight into what could happen.
Perhaps?
It was catalytic, definitely. But also, we think in the Western world, like everything is so free and safe and that nothing, there's no way we could go into a sort of authoritarian regime. I think COVID shows us how quickly we can.
Yes, it did.
You know what I mean? Like people weren't allowed to go to their loved ones' funerals and would get sent to jail if they did. I was in Costa Rica when this happened. Thank God, because I would have been arrested in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I do not do very well with that kind of like.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that I was in Sweden at that time. I mean, right. I don't consider myself being particularly Swedish, but I happened to be here, and we didn't have a full-on lockdown, which was good.
Well, that's very lucky. But what happened on a global scale at that time is that whole systems shut down. Like our economic system shut down. Like there were no flights. It's like the fact that happened. I think people need to bear in mind that systems can collapse, and they can collapse quite quickly. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's a very real possibility that we'll get, cataclysms in the global south. There'll be widespread diaspora, hundreds of millions of people immigrating across board, like civil unrest. Okay, so this is one thing that could happen, is that there's breakdown of law and order at scale, which accelerates both decline and a rebuilding.
So I think that'll be more people will realize that we can't go on like this. This is
but feasible. It will force people to start growing their own food, localize communities.
Okay.
There will be dissidents who rise up and say, no, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a soothsayer. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I think it's going to be multifarious things. Also, like mass awakenings happening, like spontaneous awakenings happening, where people start remembering. Also, like the scientific paradigm changing. People such as myself, like I don't know what extent, like what my role is going to be in this, but people like Bernard Kastrup, myself, other new paradigm thinkers, Richard Tarnas, what have you, who are out there in academia saying this sort of stuff, and there will come a time when the old materialist worldview will collapse. It just will, because it's dead. It's wrong. It's like so outdated.
Yeah.
So, it'll be all these things. And I don't know. I just focus on the good, and I focus every day on trying to be a better person, because I'm a human with a shadow in a process of evolution. And if I can't live from my heart every single day, then I'm not doing good enough.
Wonderful.
And that's not good enough, so
I'm sure you're doing a wonderful job of being a wonderful person and a good person.
Thank you.
Most of us probably are. And I think this was a very positive and beautiful note to end on. So Arabella, where can people go if they want to know more about you and your amazing work?
Yeah, they can head to my website, which is just my name, arabellathaïs.com. Maybe you could put a link or something. And
of course, link in the description box as always.
Yeah. And on there, I have a podcast called The Cosmic Codex, which I've just relaunched. I've just relaunched my podcast, and I renamed and relaunched it. So in the coming weeks, there's going to be loads of amazing stuff on there. I've just interviewed Bernard Carr, who's a friend. He worked with Stephen Hawking for 50 years on black holes. We're talking about black holes as sort of like singularities in consciousness. I've got Richard Tarnas on there. So similar to your podcast, they'll be able to get access, similar information there. And of course, they can access the Temple of Truth, which is my school of consciousness and various offerings.
That's an online school, is it?
Yeah, it's online. You're exactly
aiming for having a physical school as well.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's like not even an option that it doesn't happen. There's going to be a physical temple, like the ancient mystery schools.
Oh,
like the Eleusinian mysteries, like the Pythagorean cult.
Hermetic, the seven Hermetic principles.
Sorry?
The Hermetic
yes.
knowledge, wisdom.
Yes, and in these physical places, I want to have high frequency, like cutting edge high frequency medicine devices, priestesses, like just super high vibe places that are sanctuaries of healing, as well as divine worship to cosmic rhythms and to beauty.
Arabella, it's been a true joy speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck with your enlightenment work.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll speak soon. Bye. Bye.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that like button and share the video with your friends. Please support the channel if you can. I appreciate all the support. You can become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or you can make a one-off donation via PayPal if you wish. All the links are in the description box below. Thank you.